Everybody, how you guys doing today? This is Jim from the Pain PT. Good to see everybody here today. We have evidence of the week again, and I hope this evidence starts to seep deep into your brain. It gives you some information, right, that makes some sense that you can take from it and apply it to your own life. And there's lots of research out there, actually stuff coming out all the time around the mind-body relationship between stress and physical symptoms in your body. And today we're going to talk about the relationship between emotion and physical symptoms in your body. And before we get to that, just want to mention that if any of you are interested in doing some work in this area for your own healing, I do offer brain retraining classes now. These are new. They started in February. Rolling classes you can join, meant to retrain the brain in a positive direction, working around emotions, cognitions, which are your beliefs and your thoughts, looking at your behaviors that are still affecting you, things such as avoidance behaviors, personality behaviors, and also your attention, your attentional behaviors. Attention is more about your awareness, your mindfulness, things like somatic tracking, PRT, or learning how to focus your attention in a good, positive way for healing. So these are some of the topics that I cover in the classes. I also offer individual assessment and coaching, one-to-one coaching, so people can overcome their chronic symptoms. Let's get to the evidence of the week. And this is a really interesting study. And this is going to bring back Dr. Sarno. Dr. Sarno is going to be in the back here, clapping his hands, saying, "Yep, I told you so. I knew this is true." This is a 2016 study, okay? And the power of the study is that was carried out over 20 years. So it's a very long-term study, longitudinal nature, 156 couples. And again, this title of the study was in relation to married couples. The title of the study was Interpersonal Emotional Behaviors and Physical Health, a 20-year longitudinal study of long-term married couples. This was done in the San Francisco Bay Area. And what they found here, I'm going to read through an article about it. I'll post both the paper and the article about it that came out from University of California, Berkeley, where the research was done. And here's what the first sentence of this article says. If you rage with frustration during a marital spat, watch your blood pressure. If you keep a stiff upper lip, watch your back or your body. Okay, so what they found here is that people over 20 years, they found that married couples, how they behave during conflicts was able to predict or suggest what happened to their body. Okay, so they found that people who, again, raged out, if you or somebody who was on the far end of exploding with anger all the time, that was linked with cardiovascular issues as life went on. And the opposite of what they call stonewalling behavior, or keeping everything in, stiff upper lip, you know what that was linked to? Musculoskeletal ailments in the body. Okay. And the link was a little bit stronger for husbands, but it was also there for wives as well. It says here, shutting down emotionally or stonewalling during conflict raises the risk of musculoskeletal ailments such as a bad back or stiff muscles. Okay. And this is in alignment with Dr. Sarno's work, right? It makes sense too, if you think about things logically. If you hold in your emotion and you contain it and you restrain it, it's coming out through your body still, right? Because it's activating your body through your autonomic nervous system. So it makes sense. You increase tension. And this article said here, the psychologist who carried it out, Robert Levinson, senior author, says, our findings reveal a new level of precision in how emotions are linked to health and how our behaviors over time can predict the development of negative health outcomes. Okay, so what we found here, again, 20 years of data. This is not a short-term study. That's why I find this a very powerful study. It also took into consideration and controlled for other factors that could have caused these changes, such as age, education, level of exercise, smoking, alcohol use, and caffeine consumption. So they put those aside, and even with those there's still a link here that emerged from the emotions. And again, what they found here, they said this is what's also very interesting, sort of like what they found in the study I mentioned around whiplash, or may have mentioned this before. Talk about that another time. It didn't take long for the researchers to guess which spouses would develop ailments down the road based on how they reacted to disagreements. So based on how the person was, right, the way we are, our personality, how we deal with emotions, they could develop that very quickly. And here's what they said here. One of the other authors, Claudia Haas, assistant professor at Northwestern University, said we looked at marital conflict conversations that lasted just 15 minutes and could predict the development of health problems over 20 years for husbands, and again, included some for wives, based on emotional behaviors that they showed during these 15 minutes. Okay, so just 15 minutes of seeing how the person was, because that person probably wasn't shifting or changing, again, how they're acting in relation to anger, that could predict. And they followed these people for 20 years, and every 5 years they checked in with them. And here's what they say. These findings could spur hot-headed people to consider interventions such as anger management. So again, we know people who blow up are real angry, real strong. They need to calm down. They need to kind of like chill out their anger, right? Find ways to reduce their anger and express it in a more controllable way. While people who withdraw during conflict, and this is the people we typically see who get conditions I work with, right? They pull back. They're not the one who is the expressor. They might benefit from resisting the impulse to bottle up their emotions, the researcher said. Okay. And they mentioned here, this is about conflict, right? It's a conflict, which is about the emotion of anger. Conflict happens in every marriage, but people deal with it in different ways. Some of us explode with anger. Some of us shut down. And our study shows that these different emotional behaviors can predict the development of different health problems in the long run. Okay. So again, we looked at 156 middle-aged couples. Okay. Every 5 years, they were videotaped in the laboratory as they discussed events in their lives and areas of disagreement and enjoyment. And so they were looking for different ranges of emotions based on facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice. Okay. And they included a bunch of other questionnaires too around specific health issues. Okay. So what they studied here, what they looked at here was specifically the emotion of anger, right? Which Dr. Sarno really highlighted. The health consequences of anger, and then the emotion suppressing behavior known as stonewalling. So suppressing the anger. Okay. They also looked at what's interesting, looked at sadness and fear. So two other emotions, right? You got three of your primary emotions right there. You got anger, sadness, and fear as predictors of these health outcomes within the relationship. But they did not find any significant associations, right? But they did find significant association with the emotion of anger. The only thing they found with sadness was that when one of the partners was showing a lot of sadness, the other partner ended up having some health issues as well. Okay. And I'll go over that in just a moment. So our findings suggest, this is quote unquote Dr. Levinson's, our findings suggest particular emotions expressed in a relationship predict vulnerability to particular health problems. And those emotions are anger and stonewalling. Okay, so let's think about that. Stonewalling, holding in the emotions, right? Remember, emotions gets created by the brain. It activates the body, right? As emotions, again, are feelings. It activates your autonomic nervous system. And you can just imagine, like, if emotions activated, we don't express it or suppress or repress, where is it going? It's going stronger into the body, isn't it? It's going to activate the body stronger. It's going to stay activated. Okay, so again, they looked here again. They said the researchers monitored the videotape conversations, looking for different behaviors such as lips pressed together, knitted brows, voices raised or lowered beyond their normal tone, and tight jaws. Okay, when we think about tense jaws being a sign of anger. Okay, and so we also looked for in the stonewalling behavior, they look for what they call away behavior, right? So not showing anger. So it's facial stiffness, rigid neck muscles, little to no eye contact. All right. So again, the body is showing the emotion in some way, whether it's visible, the person's really, you can tell they're really angry, or the person's trying not to show their anger, but it's showing up in their body in some way, right? There's no way around you stopping the emotion. It's still going to be there. It's just how you express it. Don't express it. Again, the spouses who observed during their conversations to fly off the handle more easily were at greater risk of developing chest pain, high blood pressure, and other cardiovascular problems over time. Okay, so some of you may fall in that category. Not as many, though, because with this work, as Dr. Sarno alluded to correctly, the people who hold it in, stonewallers, they're more apt to get some of these conditions. And that's exactly what they found, which is so interesting. This, again, 20-year study. Those who stonewalled by barely speaking or in avoiding eye contact were more likely to develop backaches, stiff necks, joints, general muscle tension throughout the body in the arms and the legs, right? So pains, tension, stiffness, right? So it's going into our bodies, everybody. And I really hope you take this in. It's like, wow, this is an incredible study to follow people for 20 years and see how emotions in very specific ways, specifically anger, and how we relate to that emotion and how we work with that can have and show direct health outcomes that are very different. And Dr. Levinson says this. This is very important, everybody. For years, we've known that negative emotions are associated with negative health outcomes. But this study dug deeper to find that specific emotions, which particular anger, are linked to specific health problems. This is one of many ways that our emotions provide a window for glimpsing important qualities for our future lives. Okay. So very important study, I think, right? It really shows you all here how Dr. Sarno said rage or anger can affect the body and cause these outcomes. Okay. And this is really, really interesting in relation to a 20-year study. That's a long time study. Okay. And there's other data here too that also previous data they mentioned here in the study that also support this. But they see here about emotions. I want to come back to emotions because that's what we're highlighting today. It says emotions have the capacity to produce intense activation of both expressive behaviors like the face and the body, like you can tell when someone's angry, and physiological systems, right? The autonomic, somatic, endocrine system. So, it activates our body in different ways through your nervous system that help prepare the organism to cope with critical challenges and opportunities. A considerable body of research, okay, so this is all previous research to this 2016 study, shows that emotions can, quote unquote, get under the skin. Think about some of the sayings we have, everybody. Mind body sayings that we flippantly say we don't give any credence to, even though they're real. Hey, you're getting on my nerves. Getting on my nerves. Interesting. God, it's a pain in the neck. Oh, that's such a pain in the butt. I'm getting a headache over this, right? We say some of these things, getting under the skin, right? So literally, because of the way emotions work, they activate autonomic nervous system, which activates the body. It makes a lot of logical sense that we can end up with these symptoms in the body or sensations that are coming from emotional activation. Okay. And they said here that there's a large number of laboratory-based studies that interpersonal emotional behaviors between two people that ensue are strongly related to the spouse's physical health. So again, this idea that emotions are related to physical health. Yeah, they're not just related to emotional health or mental health, they're related to physical health. And again, this stonewalling one is really interesting, is when we don't express the emotion as much. And that fits in line with a lot of Dr. Sarno's work of repressed emotions or suppressing the emotions. And they mention here that expressive behaviors associated with stonewalling, which I'm highlighting here today, include a face appearing stiff or frozen, right? Somebody going into freeze state, a clenched jaw, right? How many of you might have a clenched jaw? Rigid neck muscles, as well as changes in verbal expressions, including monosyllabic answers or silence. So not speaking up, holding things in, or being silent. It's showing up in your body in some way, right? But more internally than externally. All right. And it says in terms of autonomic and somatic activity that's happening in your body with anger is typically associated with elevated somatic activity, okay, in terms of activating the body, and cardiovascular activation. Okay. And if anger becomes chronic, meaning person's really angry all the time, cardiovascular activation. Okay. Hyperreactivity, they call it. And what we see here is that In contrast, stonewalling, it changes the somatic activity, right? Less movement, right? Holding it in, increased muscle tension, right? In the neck and the back, increased electrodermal activation. So the autonomic nervous system still activating, right? Because the emotion of particularly anger activates us. You can't get around that. It's a human emotion. It's just, what are we doing with it? Stonewallers are holding it in. So the muscle tension is building in the body. Remember, the muscle tension is building in the body for a biological reason, to be able to fight, right? To be able to attack. So the muscles tense up biologically for a good reason. In the same way that muscles can guard and protect when somebody's scared, to protect against an attack, right? So the body is doing this in a real way. So this is how we can understand how emotions can activate your body, cause very real symptoms. Okay. And again, they looked at cardiovascular symptoms in the study were pain in the heart or the chest, heart thumping or racing, getting easily out of breath. And the musculoskeletal symptoms they looked at included related to muscle tension. They said here include pain in the back, neck, back, anywhere, arms and legs. So pretty much throughout your body. Okay. And they say here again, both these conditions, right? We see a lot of people with cardiovascular issues. It's a leading cause of death. Musculoskeletal symptoms are also back pain among the most frequently reported health problems in the world. All right. So these are significant issues here. And again, here, through the study, they wanted to show that there may be greater specificity in the link between these interpersonal emotional behaviors and health. Okay. And what was really interesting here, like I said before, was that they found that the other two emotions, I want to say sadness and fear, did not have the same impact on these married couple in terms of what they saw. But anger did. Anger was significant, and the other two were not. And I mentioned to you before, if I can find it here in the study, that the only other relationship they saw here with sadness was that it actually, if one partner was sad, the other one could be affected by it. And they mentioned that to being something as if like a caregiver, if somebody is a caregiver can take an emotional toll on them. Okay. They said here that one spouse's sadness behavior emerged as particularly important, predicting increases in the other spouse's health symptoms. These findings suggest that when one spouse expresses sadness, which serves to elicit sympathy and empathy in the partner, it has an untoward effect on the other spouse's health. In some ways, this is reminiscent of research showing that heavy health burden associated with caregiving. So caregivers can also have a heavy heart or be sad, and that can give them health symptoms as well, right? So emotions, again, I want you to understand, take from the study and give you health symptoms, particularly anger, right? This is one that they highlighted here. And in this case of the interpersonal relationship, it was the anger, not the fear or the sadness that had the biggest association. Okay. And it was stronger for husbands, but it was also showed up for wives. And they mentioned other studies have supported it. It can be go in both genders, basically. And I just want to give you the context of the study because, again, 20 years is a long-term study. And they mentioned here that the data was pretty strong. Okay. It wasn't like it was weak. And they said the strength of the relationships was sizable. Okay. In this study. And they mentioned the effect sizes are similar or even larger than those associated with well-established risk factors such as obesity or lack of exercise, predicting cardiovascular disease outcomes. So it was pretty strong, and especially for the cardiovascular, but it showed positive for the stonewallers as well. Last thing I'll draw from this study, they mentioned here that a lot of the studies now more recently have moved away from some of the old things they looked at in the 50s and 60s around how in psychosomatic research, going back even further with Freud, how psychosomatic issues arise from emotions, okay, specific emotions, profiles. And they mentioned a classic example found in the work of this guy Graham in 1962, showed that individuals with particular psychosomatic disorders, like getting hives or hypertension, were more likely to identify with certain attitudes, depicted in cartoon-like drawings, like hives associated feelings like you were taking a beating, right? And were helpless to do anything about it. Hypertension was associated with feeling like you were being threatened and had to be on guard. All right. It says, despite early promise, these kinds of studies declined. Um, though they're saying this may actually be somewhat true now, right? Some people, I think Louise Hay and some other writers link, certain symptoms with certain things that you see in the person. So this actually might be somewhat true. Okay. But the modern literature is geared away from some of this old links that we looked at here. Okay. But this study revisited that, and they said provided new support for these earlier ideas that relationships between behavior and emotional factors in health could be more specific. Okay. So I hope this is helpful, everybody. This is really, to me, really interesting stuff here that we can take from this study, a 20-year study, again, and it supports the work of Dr. Sarno and his original work. If you haven't read his work, take a look at some of his books, and in particular, the emotion of anger. And I want you to take this in for yourself and think, does this apply to me? It may or may not, but you want to look at that and see, because we remember emotions are real. They're not just in your head. They actually affect your body, as you can see here from real data, 20-year study, and seeing that 2 different health outcomes were shown in very specific ways based on how somebody dealt with the emotion of anger. Okay. So I hope this was helpful, everybody. I'll continue to give you evidence of the week. I find it powerful. I found it enlightening, and hopefully gives you the understanding and the belief that, hey, I have some of this. This is me. And then I can learn what I need to do about it. So when it comes to anger, as you could just imagine there, they said in terms of we're on either extreme, we want to start to do a bit of the opposite, right? I call this opposite therapy. You want to, if you hold in your emotions all the time, you hold in your anger, well, you got to start expressing it in some way and in healthy ways. And if you're somebody who's hot-headed and blown up all the time, you got to find a way to manage that anger, express it in healthy ways as well without going over the top. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Again, if you're looking for support in your journey, you want to understand if you have one of these conditions, or you want to join the brain retraining classes or work with me one-to-one. I work with all these different pieces. Emotions is one of the big pieces. Reach out. You can find me at thepainpt.com, and we'll see you guys next time.